All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I think we'll get started. I do apologize. Today, I appear to not be able to share my video, the joys of Zoom. So I apologize for that. But I would love to get started, and I will first introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Essie. I'm a financial coach at Questus, and I am also an accredited financial counselor. I see some familiar names in the attendee list today, so I know I'm not a stranger to some of you. But I do appreciate you joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about financial and other considerations for retirement and how to prepare for all of the aspects of that journey, both financial and non financial. I'd like to introduce my co host today. Sean, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Brigham. I am also an accredited financial counselor here with Questus as well.
Thank you. Sean is our newest coach, and it's his second co-hosting workshop today. So I'm really, really happy to have someone else joining me. This is a really important topic, and I think having multiple perspectives and professionals on the call just benefits everybody. If you have any questions as we're moving through the workshop, please feel free to include those in the chat. If you want to do it as a Q&A, then only the hosts and panelists will be able to see that. You can also choose to make your question anonymous in that format. So either way you'd like to ask questions, we're happy to answer. We'll try to answer as we go, but we may need to wait till the end. So please bear with us as we move through that. And with that said, let's get right into it.
All right, so here we talk about knowing what you want out of retirement and how that financial blueprint is going to look. So when we think about retirement, sometimes we often think about financial planning. Sometimes those two names get interchanged, and that's understandable because as you get ready for retirement, you want to make sure your financial planning is straight as well. All right, so I know when I first started thinking about retirement, I had lots of things to think about because I wasn't exactly sure what to do as well either because I had just started working. I just knew, hey, retirement's something that I need to get ready for. Know it's going to be a ways off, and I wasn't really sure what I need to do to get ready for it. I just knew, hey, I needed to get ready because I didn't want to continue working forever. So we want to also make sure that you all are on your right path for financial freedom as well. So you got four different things here you want to think about. All right. So the first thing is what you value your spending and time on. So think about the things you actually want to spend money on or how you want to spend that time during retirement. All right. Also think about what are you spending your money on now and what do you like to spend your time on now as well. Sometimes those things may be the same as now as well as in retirement. Sometimes those things may change. So that's the first thing you want to think about. What am I spending my money on? And what am I going to be spending my time on? All right. Next is what do you how do you see your ideal life in 1, 5, 10, 20 years? Because remember, we're all in different stages here of retirement or when we expect to retire. Some of us may just be starting working our working career and we've got maybe 20, 30 years before we retire. Some of you, hey, you may be knocking on that door, you're getting ready to retire next year. All right. So, like I said, we're all wanting the same in both of retirement, but we may be in different phases of when that will happen. All right. And then lastly, you want to envision life, the life you want of what you want to see when you wake up, how you want it to be. All right. So, to get to think about those things, like I say, you want to think about what actually is that will happen in retirement. All right. Because the things you do now may not be exactly what you want. All right. You may be sacrificing things now to get ready for that life in retirement. All right. You may not be doing the job you actually want. All right. But you're suffering through that maybe so that you can have the actual retirement life that you dream of. Some of you may actually be doing the job that you love. All right. So when it comes to time for retirement, um, You got to also think about, hey, will I still be working? All right. Will I be working part time? All right. Because these are things that you might want to consider of how you want to get that, be prepared financially for retirement. All right. Other things to consider are things that may change for you financially between now and retirement. So some of those things that may be changing are like hobbies, travel, spending time with family, grandkids. All right. Another big thing that could change during retirement is, your health care. So all these things have cost. So some of your costs may be going up in certain areas. Some of your costs may be going down in certain areas. All right. So when it comes to preparing for retirement and financial planning, you've got to take into consideration all these different things that could possibly change. All right. So some costs that you have now, like I said, may be going away. And then some costs that you don't have now will be going up, like travel. Some of you have aspirations of traveling to see maybe friends and family that you haven't seen in a while. So that's like a cost that could be going up. All right. And, I believe that is it for that slide, right? All right, so things to consider here. Your main concerns getting ready for retirement. Said, how much do I need? All right. So we'll talk about how much you need because everyone is different. All right, but we'll want to make sure we talk to you and get you ready to see how much do you actually want for retirement, how much you're going to be comfortable living on. Because remember, we're not going to be living on the same amount of money that we live on now currently. So we need to say, hey, how much do I need for retirement? All right, where should I be putting my money so it can grow so they can get ready for retirement? All right. And then how do I balance my saving for all my goals while I'm managing my day-to-day spending? Because right now, as you're getting ready for retirement, you want to be putting away money for retirement while you're still trying to handle your day-to-day life. So you still have bills and retirement planning right now. So you want to try to balance that out so that you still have a life now, but you'll also have the life you want during retirement. All right.
Yeah, so steps that you can take now to prepare for later. Just to kind of summarize what Sean was saying, we have we may not know exactly what our life's going to look like in retirement, but we know that we should be saving for it. And that's not necessarily helpful in figuring out how much we should be saving for it or what we're even saving it for. And we can't necessarily know those things until we get closer and closer to retirement. But starting the process where you are now, regardless of how close or far away it is setting yourself up to think about that future and to start actually manifesting what that's going to be. The sooner you start thinking about what that life could look like, the easier it is to envision what money you would need to support that kind of life. So, steps you can take now to prepare for later. So, we always start with looking at what you're spending. And you probably are tired of hearing us as broken records talk about spending plans, but really the basis of everything that you're doing with your money is based on what you're spending and saving. And looking at your current expenses, fixed and variable, fixed are often not things we can necessarily change. Variable, they can be changed or they are changing on a monthly basis. That would be like groceries or gas, entertainment, dining out. Looking at your expenses and saying which of these do I absolutely need to have? I need to spend money on housing, but what could I change that I would value more? So, for instance, you have to live somewhere. Hopefully, you're happy with where you're living and you feel like it's financially viable, but maybe it's not. And you're looking at your expenses and saying, I could spend less on this and be able to put more money where I value it. Or maybe you're spending a lot on your housing and you value where you live and you value the lifestyle it affords you and you don't want to change that. It's all about looking at what you're spending to figure out if you can adjust anything to save more. And it's based on two, considering your values. So when you're thinking about your what you enjoy in your life now, is your money going to those things or is it not? And if it's not, why not? Is it because there's not enough money to go to those things? If that's true, maybe it's going back to step one and looking at your expenses and saying, well, what could I update or change so that it's possible that I can put more money toward what I value? A lot of times when I'm working with a client, um, when we actually connect their accounts on the platform and look at their spending, they're usually surprised by what they're spending in their different categories because it's not necessarily something they're doing on a regular basis. Maybe you are, but I know when I started to look at my spending plan, I did not know how much I was going out to eat. I had no idea. I didn't think it was as much as it was, but I didn't really get a lot of value from all of those experiences. So for me, it was an easier ask to change that spending category to something smaller. And then I was able to allocate that money to something else I valued more, like a savings goal. And so if you're thinking about what you value now and you're looking and checking in on that over the years, then as you begin to get closer to retirement, you're going to already have a really strong idea of what your life looks like and what you like and don't like about it and what you would want to do differently in the future. So I think it's a good place to start because you're building that habit of knowing where your money's going, thinking about where your money's going, and dreaming about where your money could go. And those are all really good habits that don't just start when you retire. They start now so that by the time you get to that point, it's something you already do on a regular basis. I do have a worksheet I'm going to show you on the next slide, not yet though, but there is a values worksheet in the platform that I really enjoy. I've done it myself. I do it about once a year because I find that what I value changes yearly or less. And it's good to check in with yourself on if your spending is still mirroring where you want your money to go. The third thing is to estimate your additional or eliminated expenses in retirement. This is easier to do when you're closer to retirement, but it's something that you can start anytime. So, estimating additional costs you might have in retirement. So, Sean was mentioning that there's certain travel you might be doing more of in retirement. That's probably going to cost more than now because you might not have enough leave to be able to travel as much as you'd like to. So that might be an estimated additional expense. This goes back to values. Do you value traveling and seeing people, traveling to places you've not been? Would you do more if you could, if you had the time and the money? So that's something to think about when you're considering how much money you're going to want in retirement and what you're going to actually spend your time doing in retirement. Um, so that's an additional cost you might have. I have a nice list of additional expenses and reduced expenses here. Some of them are on both of the lists because the way that it can work in retirement is that at the beginning of retirement, you may spend a lot more on hobbies, interests, travel, and so your costs are going to go up and your health costs may still be pretty low, but then there's going to be a dip where you kind of stop doing as much of the hobbies and travel and then it goes back up, kind of like a U curve. And as it goes back up, it's health expenses that can sometimes go up. And so what you're spending year to year may not be the same. And what you're doing doing today and that you expect to do in retirement is probably what you'll do for some period of it, but not the whole thing. And because retirement isn't just a destination, it can be decades long. You're going to want to continue to check in on a regular basis with your values and your spending even in retirement. So getting those habits situated now is really, really helpful. But also thinking about what expenses you have now that you might not have can also help you figure out what your expenses will be that you'll need to cover in retirement. If you have a home and you plan to pay it off and you plan to stay in it, that's an expense you have now that you may not have in the future. Or maybe you're going to downsize and move somewhere else where the cost of living is lower. And that's something you value, and therefore you can do an estimate of what the costs might be for that. And you can check in on that as the years go by and see if that's still how you feel, see if you need to adjust anything based on changes. that you're considering. And so a couple common things with work expenses, those are going to go away. You're not going to commute anymore. You're not going to have your gas and vehicle costs, the wear and tear. But then again, there may be increases in health out of pocket costs that you may want to consider, and moving and relocating. Maybe you're going to be doing more charitable giving. You're going to be giving more gifts to grandkids. Like this is all stuff that you don't know what those are going to be now, but thinking about them and knowing that these costs could change over time helps you get more specific about how much money you're going to actually need to cover in retirement. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. I'm just going to show you this worksheet. This is our values worksheet, and Brian's going to link this in the chat for you to go directly to in our platform. This is, it's called Gaining Clarity on Your Values. I'd love if you would just take a look at it. You don't have to do anything with it, but I think it's a really good starting point in thinking about different values that you might be spending money on that you don't necessarily think of in that way. I just think it really opens up the conversation about spending and saving. And I just think it's a really good place to start in thinking about retirement, but also the next 5 years, the next 10 years. If it's not retirement for you, maybe it's other life hurdles. Like maybe it's buying a home, maybe it's um, having a wedding, getting married, starting a family, saving for college. Like these are all things that we're doing concurrently with retirement. And we can do all of these things concurrently, but it's a matter of really putting our money where our mouth is, really, with what we value and what we don't. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, and Sean will tell us a little bit more about the next steps.
All right, so first up, you want to determine what makes you happy. All right. So what is it that you are currently spending the money on? All right. So look, a good way of doing that is a bad way of doing that, first of all, is just thinking, hey, oh, what am I spending my money on? Oh, I know, I like this, I like that. But like him said, you need to actually look at it on paper. All right, because once you actually see it on paper, like look at those bank statements. All right, look at your financial statements, the actual official statements on paper that shows where the money's leaving. That will actually truly show you, hey, this is where I value my money. This is where I'm spending my money. You may be surprised, just like you said, oh, I'm actually spending more money on going out than I thought. A lot of us think that we spend money in certain areas, and when we actually see it in black and white on paper, we realize, oh no, that's not where I'm spending my money. I'm actually spending it here or over there. So think about, like I said, that first part, find out where you are actually spending that money. Think about where you want to spend that money. See if those two actually align. All right. Am I spending the money where I actually want to spend it? Or am I spending it where I thought I was spending it? All right. Then you want to actually create a spending plan. All right. We don't want to say budget, we want to say spending plan. All right. Budget sounds restrictive. Spending plan is letting me know, hey, this is where I want to spend it. So I'm fix a plan so that I can actually spend it where I want to spend it. All right. So we're going to fix that spending plan based on the values we actually want. All right. So the first part, we're looking to see, hey, where am I actually spending it? Now I want to fix up a spending plan based on where I actually want to spend it. Remember, our money works for us. We want to tell our money what to do. We want to tell our money where to go. We don't want our money telling us where it already went. All right. So that's why it's important to have that spending plan so we can tell our money, this is where you're going to go. This is what you're going to do. All right. Then you want to look at that spending plan and estimate, hey, how much am I going to be needing monthly? All right. Do I have enough? All right. Do I have a surplus? All right. Because you may end up like I said, when you get into getting ready for retirement, you may not be spending as much money as you were before. Like my folks, when they got into retirement age, they were a little worried at first about still supporting because we were still young when they retired, and they were still worried about paying for college and things of that nature. But when they actually did a budget and seeing where all the money was going to be going and how much they were going to be saving by not doing other work related things, they saw, oh, the money is there. All right, so a lot of your worries can be alleviated by just putting pen to paper and putting a spending plan together to see, like I say, what you value, what you want to do, and you will find out that lots of times, hey, it'll work. But you're not going to know that unless you actually put forth that effort and put pen to paper and see, hey, what the numbers look like. All right. So they were able to find out that because, growing up with, the three kids, he didn't have much time for out of state or out of the country travel. Now, we traveled all over the US, but we never really went out of the country. So now that they were retired, that was one of their big things that they wanted to make sure that they value and they made time and money for is getting those passports and going out of the country. So if that's something that you want to do, or you got something else that you want to do that you never had time to do while working, that's something you might want to put in your spending plan, see how much it is, so that you can make that effort to make that happen. All right. And then lastly, you want to see, hey, what the gap is. How much am I off? All right. You said, do I have a surplus of money left over now that I've done my spending plan for while I'm working versus while I get ready for retirement? Or, hey, does it turn out, hey, I'm short? Or, now that I see that my spending plan, I'm going to be a little short for retirement, I know now that while I'm still working, I need to put a little bit more money set aside for retirement. Or hey, I might need to stop some of the spending I'm doing that I really don't necessarily value right now while I'm working. That because I would value this money more during retirement. All right, so it's kind of a trade-off there. All right, next slide, Mr. Bryant, please. All right, so here are some things that we can consider how we're going to pay or how we're going to sustain ourselves during retirement time. So the first one is Social Security. Now, um, those of you that will be getting Social Security, I like to think of that as like a little extra cherry on top. That's not something you should really think of as your main source of retirement. All right. That's just the extra that, hey, I just happen to get because, a lot of us probably won't get in that. They're younger. Just like I said myself, I don't, not really that young, but that's not something I'm considering or factoring into my retirement. So if I do get Social Security, if it's still there or what little bit that's there for me, hey, that's just the extra cherry on top. I got a little extra cash coming in. That's not something that I plan on actually factoring into my retirement. Okay. Next big thing is those of you that work for the government or work for a corporate employee that still has a pension. All right, those are rare nowadays. Lots of times it's now, your 401ks and 403bs and things of that nature. Not many institutions still have a pension. So if you have a pension, a good deal for you. You know exactly pretty much how much to expect for your retirement because that pension is, a set number. All right. Some of you may actually consider still working part time. All right. Because some of you may be working, like say, in a job that you don't really necessarily care for. Like I say, lots of folks go to school, get that degree, and then they don't really go into the field that they wanted to work in. Now, during retirement, some folks think, hey, I always wanted to do this, or I always want to do that. I never did get the chance to do it. Well, sometimes folks will go and work part time in that field so that they can get that time back or that feeling back of, oh, yes, I fulfilled that dream of working in this field. Now they one fulfill that dream of working in that field and they get a little extra income coming in as well part time. All right. Then we also, like I said, we have our regular retirement accounts like 401ks, 403bs, or 457 plans. So just depending on if you're private or a government institution, but all pretty much work the same way. So that's a way that's going to fund your retirement. For health related issues, you got your health savings accounts. That's where you can get some tax savings if you put aside money that may help you in the future. Um, Another thing that lots of people are starting to turn to now, rental properties. All right, so getting rental income. So, properties that grandma may have had, or they always say, "Hey, don't sell grandma's house." Well, turn it into a rental house. All right, and then that's income coming in monthly. All right, and then other types of investments like regular stocks and investments. Those are all different ways to have money coming in. And then, of course, there's also the government assistance. We have, SNAP, WIC, Medicaid, Medicare, all those things as well that can help you um, try to alleviate some of the income uh, or some of the spending for retirement. All right.
Yeah. Great recap, Sean. I'd love to move to the next slide because I want to show something that a tool that I use a lot in my coaching sessions that you can also use directly. I do also I have here Social Security income checked. I want to say something about Social Security income. So if you do qualify for Social Security and you're paying into that system, I don't necessarily want people to think it's going away. There's really no reason to think that at this point. I think it's more that we don't necessarily want to assume that that will cover our expenses, because the truth of the matter is that unless your expenses are quite low, which is possible, it's not probably going to cover all of your expenses alone. And I think we know that collectively, but I think just stating that it can be something that helps you bridge a part of the gap. And one of the cool things about our tool here that I'm showing you is that you can estimate when you're figuring out your lifetime income. This calculator can allow you to estimate your Social Security income. It also can allow you to estimate what your money will look like over time based on the linked accounts that you're going to use for retirement. And so you can input that into the retirement savings next to the where it says retirement income on the right. It says retirement savings. You're able to select accounts and click your 401ks, your 403bs, your 457s, your IRAs, whatever you have for retirement to estimate how you're doing. This is a really cool calculator to get an idea of how you're doing, but it does allow you to choose passive income as well. Some of those types of passive income that Sean just went over, you can add those manually here to get an idea of different ways that the gap could be filled in your monthly shortfall. So here you can see at the top, there's a projected monthly income, there's a projected monthly shortfall. This is based on some assumptions you see here at the top that you can put in. And you can update the assumptions based on different scenarios. It's very flexible. And you actually can also, based on our conversation so far with expenses, if you've figured out what your expenses are and what you think they could be more or less in retirement, maybe you add a little buffer because you might need a new car in retirement. You might have an expense to replace your roof in retirement. There are things that will continue to come up that in retirement that you may need to cover. And so having a buffer might be nice to include in your expenses. You can input what you think your expenses are going to be, and so that's what that little smaller inset box is there. And where it has the number 7,422, that's something you can manually add in as your expenses. You can say, well, I think my expenses in retirement are going to be $7,500. So where am I going to land based on these assumptions, based on my retirement savings now growing over time, my retirement income, and contributing however much per month for the next however many years. So you can adjust your expenses to see where you're landing. If you don't adjust the expenses, it will automatically assume that your expenses in retirement are 70% of your income. And that may or may not be accurate, but that's the assumption that the tool makes. So if you want to go in and adjust that accordingly, then that line there is you just move it up or down. But I really like this tool in client sessions because it at least gives you an idea of if you're on track for what you think you're going to have. And if you're not, then it allows you to input different things to make the changes to allow you to see where you might be short. And the way I like to look at retirement income and expenses is on a monthly basis, because if you're looking at your expenses monthly, quarterly, yearly, and figuring out what those are, and then figuring out the shortfall per month, you're not really looking at a shortfall per year. You're usually looking at your spending plan on a monthly basis and what you're spending every month. You have bills due every month. So looking at your shortfall on average per month is I think, a more helpful way to figure out what you're actually going to need to save in order to have that shortfall met per month, even if you're taking it out in retirement on a yearly basis, which you may be doing. But at least you know kind of roughly what you're going to need per month to bridge that gap between your expenses and your income. If you have questions about the lifetime income calculator, please let me know. I use it a lot. I'm very familiar with it. And you can always book a session with me to go over this. Sean also is familiar with the tools in the platform. Any of the coaches will be able to help you here. But one other thing I'll mention is, as far as finding this calculator, when you log into the platform and you're looking at your dashboard, it's one of the options at the very top. It'll say lifetime income. You can just click on that. And that from there you can add all your assumptions in. If you're more comfortable with a coach doing it with you, we can do that as well. Okay, great. So let's move on to our next slide. Okay, so now what? So great question. So first, we'll want to calculate what amount in total will fill the gap. We talked a little bit about this. So I want to just say that a financial planner or financial advisor is often a person who will help you get granular about exactly your specific retirement planning. They have the expertise in tax planning, in investments, in a lot of more specific tools that will help you figure out what amount you would need to fill that gap in. And often those are the specialists that you'll want to use for this kind of planning. Although also you can do it yourself. There's a lot of great resources and tools available online where you can start to have an idea of what you'll need in total to fill the gap. Again, the lifetime income calculator is also a really great tool, but they're all estimates. So if you're wanting just a back of envelope estimate, there's great resources out there. You can go over that with a coach as well. But if you're looking for really specific retirement planning, I do recommend a financial planner or a financial advisor who is certified and credentialed and licensed to give that kind of advice. But we also, as coaches, are happy to help figure out how to budget that amount into your spending plan and strategies to make that saving a habit over time. So we're partners with your other financial professionals. We're also able to help you figure out a strategy of how to get there. So that's something that we as coaches do every day. Consider that when you do retire, you'll need to withdraw funds, which we know, but figuring out how much without running out, that's also something that a financial planner can help with. But there's also a lot of rules of thumb that exist online, and it's pretty easy to find different strategies. Everyone's going to have a different opinion about this. And again, it's kind of up to what's best for you. It's a very specific personal decision as far as how much you would want to withdraw. Financial planners are great for that, but also a lot of information online. You'll just want to make sure you have enough saved in retirement plans and accounts to take distributions out that cover your expenses without running out of funds before retirement. So often that'll look like taking less out than what the rate of return is. This can mean withdrawing less than your earnings. So you're less likely to eat into your principal investment. That's the idea. And so there's a lot of strategies to accomplish that, but talking to someone, if you're concerned about that, is a really good idea. Prioritize saving at least what your company matches in your retirement plan and increase savings in retirement accounts to get you to your goal. So if you came to a financial coach and said, this is how much I need to save, I think, for retirement based on what I've done some research on, based on the lifetime income calculator, based on my personal financial advisor told me this, then what we as coaches can do is help you figure out how you're going to get there. And oftentimes we'll say if your company does a match on your retirement plan, you should be at least, if you're able to, at least contributing up to the match, because otherwise that's money left on the table. That would be the first step. You'll want to prioritize retirement accounts first for retirement savings. So 401ks, 403bs, whatever retirement options you have available to you. There's also IRAs, which are the same as a workplace plan as far as function goes. They're retirement specific accounts, but they're accounts you open with a brokerage. You can open it wherever you'd like. And they have different limits of contribution. There's different rules to them, but they're a fabulous additional option to a retirement workplace plan, or if you don't have a workplace plan. There's traditional or Roth, which we will talk about shortly. And if you're not sure how much you need yet, save as much as you can in your spending plan. And you can always ask a coach, especially if you have multiple savings goals, which most of us do. So if you're trying to figure out how much you can actually save for retirement while also saving for all of the other things that you want to save for, then there's obviously going to be some trade-offs there. And so figuring out how to balance those multiple goals within your spending plan is also something coaches do every day. So the more you save, the closer you're going to the closer you get to retirement, the easier it is to know if you're on track. But it's, as a rule of thumb, always a good idea to put as much into savings and retirement as is allowable in your spending plan, while also being able to spend on things that you value. Because again, Sean mentioned budgets and restrictions, kind of like a diet. Like, no one wants to be on a diet because it feels restrictive. Budgets are restrictive as well. A spending plan is simply the way you plan to spend your money. It doesn't mean you're going to spend it that way. It means it's your plan. And if plans change, as they do, then you change your plan. So you change your spending plan according to what is actually workable for you. And if it's too restrictive, you're not going to stick with it. And so that's not really useful. So it's better to have something building that habit of saving and spending according to your values that aligns with what you actually want, because then it doesn't feel like a big ask. It feels like, this is actually what I want to be doing. This feels sustainable, and it doesn't feel like I'm restricting myself. So I think that's everything on this slide, but it all comes back down to talking to a coach if you have any concerns about any of what we've talked about or how it applies to you.
All right, and back to, like I said, your spending plan. That is going to be your main friend, your main ally here, getting ready for retirement, the spending plan. All right. So remember that spending plan is, like I said, is to help you get what you want. All right. This is your whole spending plan is built around your goals of the things that you want to achieve and what you want to have. So do your spending plan. All right. Because that spending plan, like I said, is your best buddy. That's your best friend. They're the one that's going to be there to help make sure you get what you want. But in order for that to work out, you actually have to do the spending plan. All right. So, like I say, in your spending plan, you've got your three different categories. You got your short-term goals, midterm goals, and your long-term goals. All right. So we think of our short-term goals as the things that happen in the next 1 or 2, maybe 3 months. Those are going to be things like your everyday bills. All right. So most of those what they are. Most of them are about the same every month. So you know what your mortgage is or your rent, and then you've got things that may change up here and there, like maybe food consumption or your gas. Right. Just like in a few months, your food bill may change. We got Thanksgiving coming up in a few months. We've got Christmas coming up in a few months. So for your spending plan, you'll need to make sure you change, like for November, December, because if you are, having friends and family over, or if you're the one that's in charge of Christmas this year or Thanksgiving, you're not going to spend what you normally spend for your household. You've got to adjust your spending plan for all the extra guests. All right. So that's where your good spending plan comes into play now. All right. Also, like your midterm goals, those are your goals that are maybe 6 to 8 months on out, things that you're going to need or want to have. So you're trying to plan for those. Like for me, I do my insurance every 6 months. I don't do monthly. So sometimes it sneaks up on me, sometimes it doesn't. So I get that bill like, oh shoot, no, got the 6 months of 3 cars coming in. Goodness. But if I have my spending plan done correctly, that's not going to be a jumping surprise to me because I planned for it. I know, oh, that 6 months is coming up. I've got the big insurance bill coming. All right. And then your long term goals. Those are things that way off into the future, that like retirement that we're talking about, things that you're going to make sure you have. All right, so you got retirement, you've got like another thing is estate planning. All right, because remember, you don't want to think about just yourself. You want to think about your future generations behind you. So you want to make sure you're comfortable first, but you also want to try to make sure, hey, your kids' kids, and all those kind of have a nice little head start. All right, so all those are, long-term trade goals that you want to pay attention to. All right, and then it all boils down to the things that we value. All right, so what brings us joy? What do we want to do? What are we happy doing? What brings joy to us? So go through, look at your spending plan, look and see, make sure everything is good to go. One other thing about your spending plan, before we always talk about putting things on autopilot. That's a good deal, a good way to make sure that things get paid and don't get forgot about. But also go back and look and see, hey, what is on my, what's coming out of my check or what's coming out of my credit card every month that I have forgotten about. All right, because I just did that myself and I saw that, hey, I'm paying for a landline. Like, who uses landlines now still? And I've been paying for this for, I don't know how long, and I haven't used a landline since before COVID. All right, so that's somewhere where you can also free up money is by going through your spending plan to see what expenses are out there that are not needed. All right, so go through your spending plan to see what you've got going on and see what adjustments can be made.
Okay. And then we'll stay on this slide for considerations in your retirement planning. We talked briefly about some of the workplace plans and retirement options. I want to just briefly discuss things that to consider here. So, workplace plans, of course, are a really good option. Self-employed plans can also be another option if you or your partner or somebody that you're sharing a household with is self employed, there are plans, retirement plans that they can implement themselves. So there's solo 401ks, there's SEP IRAs, there's simple IRAs. You or your partner may also be enrolled in one of these plans. So these are other options for retirement accounts. There's personal accounts, as I mentioned, IRAs. These can be traditional or they can be Roth, which I'm going to talk about in the next section. HSAs, health savings accounts. These are accounts that you would have with a high deductible health plan with your employer. The HSA itself is an investment vehicle. You put money into that, it's pre-tax, and it grows tax free in whatever investments you're investing that money in over time. And if you're taking it out for medical expenses, that qualified medical expenses, then the money is not ever going to be taxed. It's triple tax advantaged. There's a pretty high amount of money you can put in per year. That money goes with you regardless of your employer. So that is a really good option for additional retirement saving. Another thing I'll mention about this is when you turn 65, the money in an HSA can be used for any purpose without penalty. But if it's used for non qualified medical expenses after age 65, it will be taxed. But that's the only circumstance where it would be taxable. 529. So I mentioned this here because even though 529 is not a retirement account, it is a college savings vehicle. 529s do have an option with very specific rules around it to be converted to a Roth IRA as part of the Secure 2.0 Act that passed at the end of 2022. I do have an article about this in the platform if you search articles and Secure 2.0, but you can also search this online. 529s that have been open for 15 years or longer can be converted the funds in them can be converted to a Roth IRA in the beneficiary's name up to a lifetime amount of $35,000 following the monthly rules of Roth conversions. So this is something that can be helpful for a young saver. Maybe you have a 529, they don't need all of it. Maybe they have a 529 and they don't use it. That can be converted to a Roth with these specific rules, and that's something to talk to your 529 plan administrator about in the future. Taxes. Let's talk about taxes. We're going to talk about Roth and traditional briefly. So, something to keep in mind with your retirement planning is that when you retire and you are qualifying for Medicare, The amount of money you earn, taxable income you earn, will impact your Medicare premium costs. That's something to keep in mind. This includes distributions from your traditional retirement accounts. That is going to be taxed as income in the year you take that out, and it will increase your taxable income, which means your Medicare premiums will be impacted. The same is true for the percentage of your Social Security income that will be taxable. This can impact pensions as well. Most pensions are considered taxable income. So this is where the Roth versus traditional consideration does come in, and where a financial planner can do what we can't, or a CPA, preferably someone who is both. But thinking about taxes is a huge part of retirement planning. We don't know what taxes will be in the future. And so with Roth versus traditional, Roth meaning um, IRAs or workplace plans that are Roth allow you to take money that is post-tax, meaning it is already taxed in the year you contribute. It grows tax-free, and when you retire, or when you're 59 and a half and older, you can take money out of that Roth, including earnings, tax-free forever. No taxes apply. This is a benefit when we're thinking about Medicare premiums and Social Security income, because there's no requirement to take the money out, whereas a traditional IRA or workplace plan does have a required minimum distribution. I think it's been raised to 74 years of age, but you will have to take money out, and it will be taxable income to you in the year that you take it out. So traditional workplace plans and IRAs are pre-tax income is going into those. So it reduces your taxable income the year that you contribute. It grows tax-free, but when you take the money out at 59 and a half or older, you are going to be subject to taxes in the income bracket that you're in at whatever the rates are at that time. So the trade-off really here is that you may have higher income in the years you contribute to a Roth, but in the future you won't pay taxes on those. Whereas with traditional, you're paying less taxes now, but you'll be paying those taxes later, and it can impact your retirement expenses. So that's something to consider. Now, as far as pros and cons, that is something a financial coach can help you with. As far as figuring out what's best for you, as far as tax planning goes, definitely recommend a CPA or a financial planner or advisor. Other things to consider in your retirement planning: estate planning. This is something that, as if there is someone who is dependent on your income, this is something you should be doing. Same with insurance. Sometimes when people hear that, they want to talk to someone who sells insurance. I think it's best to talk to a financial coach first, because we aren't selling you anything. And so we can walk you through the pros and cons of different insurance options that someone that's selling you insurance may not necessarily talk you through the pros and cons. So we always think we're a good first start in having those conversations. Estate planning is something to consider versus whether it's a will or an estate trust. I'm sorry, a will versus a trust. Trusts have wills included. They also have advance directives, which tells what you want to happen in case you are incapacitated. They also have financial power of attorneys, which also is helpful for managing your finances if you're incapacitated. So estate planning is important. And then one other thing I'll mention here is investment strategy and risk tolerance. So we talked about checking in on your spending plan regularly to make sure it's still going toward what you value and your goals, and doing that on a regular basis. It's also important as you move through the different stages of your life to assess your investment strategy and your risk. What you're comfortable with at 20 is going to be different than what you're comfortable with at 50. And as you get closer and closer to needing your retirement money, that may impact what you're willing to tolerate in the markets. So it's always good to check in on your investments and your tolerance for an appetite for the risks that you're taking 1 to 2 times a year. This isn't to say that we sell when things get scary. We don't necessarily want to do that. We just simply want to check in and make sure that our values and our investment strategies still match what we're actually doing. All right. And then lastly, we'll want to consider our ideal retired life, and that is on the next slide. We've talked about this a lot, but it can't be overemphasized that you are more than your job. You want to retire to something, not just from something. So, having these conversations and thinking about your values and how you picture your future life is important now, not just for financial planning purposes, but so that when you do retire, you are looking forward to a new chapter in your life and that you feel like you have purpose and passion and an identity outside of what you've been doing for many decades potentially. And so, cultivating the habit of assessing your values, cultivating hobbies, interests, an identity outside of work is so important so that when you retire, you can actually enjoy those years rather than say, well, now what? I don't know what I'm going to do with my time. We love vacations, we look forward to them, but they're, a couple weeks, maybe a month max. How often have we actually had years to consider what we enjoy doing and figure out ways to spend our time that wasn't getting kids to work or getting kids to school, getting to work, and just having a lot of hustle and bustle in our lives. So finding purpose, strengthening your relationships and social connections, staying open to making new friends, deciding if you want to move or stay where you are, rent versus buy. We're actually going to do a workshop on that next month. Access to healthcare. Are you going to be moving to a place where you might not have access to healthcare? Maybe it's a rural area. Maybe that's where you are now, and you want to be closer to healthcare. You want to be closer to activities. You want to be closer to family and friends. You just need to make sure that as you're moving through your life stages, that you're really taking note of what fills your cup and what doesn't, and create a transition plan as you get closer to retirement, or even a change in careers, or some huge change in your life. Have a plan to transition from the old to the new. I mean, even having kids leave the home can be a huge transition and really difficult for a lot of people. And so having a plan of, like, what am I going to do with my time? How am I going to spend my money? And how am I going to save differently? These are all things to consider throughout your life. Um, and oh, by the way, if you do want to move, I highly suggest visit the destination first, before deciding to buy a home or even to make a move. So that's always something that I recommend if you are thinking that you want to retire in, let's say, another country and you haven't really spent a significant amount of time there. That's something to consider for sure. I know a lot of people want to repatriate or to go be an expat. And I think that's fabulous. It's something I've considered too, but I think it's good to vacation there for a long period of time before making those kinds of decisions. Okay, next slide. I think we're wrapping up.
All right, so to get access to things like coaching and that wonderful lifetime income calculator that Ms. Kim went over with you all, you want to be able to log in. So some of you have logged in before and know how to and have accessed some of the great tools that we have. Some of you have not. So like I said, to access this, you'll go to questis.co, so .co, and you'll log in. All right. And if you have never logged in before, all right, this is the simple instructions of how to do it. You'll just click on the new user and you'll use your work email. All right. So questis.co, and you'll click on the login button and it'll bring you to this page here, and you can log in. For those that have already have your access already, feel free to log in, access all the tools and calculators. We have several tools and calculators that we did not go over with today, but there are several more there that you can use that are very helpful. You got home buying, down payments, paying down credit card calculators. You got all different kinds of different resources there to help. All right. And it's all part of the system already. There's no extra charge for anything. All you have to do is just spend your time and dedication and putting in the information. All right. So once again, just questis.co, and for our new users, just use your work email to get your sign in completed. All right. Next, Mr. Bryant. And that is the end for today. So we thank you all for joining. And like I said, since we were going over retirement, getting yourself ready for retirement, hopefully your future self will thank you for sitting through and picking up some nice gems as well. All right. We look
Yes.
forward to seeing you all on the next one.
Yes, and if you have any questions, please send those. We'll stay on a few more minutes, but otherwise, we look forward to seeing you in another workshop or a financial coaching session. Well, thank you and have a great rest of your week. All right, thank you, everyone. Goodbye.